So now we're going to configure our router. And what are we going to call our router? Good grief, who knows? What are the names here? Alright, so let me go to global configuration mode, host name, let's call it Kepler. Again, I hope that's how you spell it. I don't know. And we don't really need to do much here. We could do some of the standard router fare. You know, we could set passwords, I guess. But the main thing we need to do is just set up encapsulation and subinterfaces for routing for all our VLANs. So this is just sort of, I don't know, par for the course, but we'll go ahead and configure the router as perhaps we should. So console password, and let's do auxiliary or aux password and kiwi and login and VTY0. The 2000 series router was 1180. You can use a question mark if you can't remember, but password and kiwi and login. And let's see, what else might we want to do. Let's do a message of the day, a little banner. Welcome to the router. You will be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law, or whatever. And that's sort of all the rudimentary router things that we might want to take care of. Now, let's select an interface, F0/0. We don't really want to configure an IP address, and there isn't one. If there were, you'd want to say, you know, no IP address. I don't need to do this because there's no IP, but if there were, I'd want to remove it. But I do want to do this. I'll say no shutdown and bring the interface up and make it active. And now what I want to do is switch from interface mode to subinterface mode. So I'd say ent fast Ethernet 0/ and then 0.1. Okay, that'll be my first. And so now we need to set up encapsulation and routing. Remember that our first VLAN, the administrative VLAN, was network 16. So here's the way this works. It doesn't really matter the order that you do it in, but I'll try to keep it in the same order, I guess, just to make it easier to absorb. But we want to choose .1Q, which is Cisco's implementation of 802.1Q. On the 2800 series routers and more modern routers, you don't have ISL as an option. Cisco's trying to leave ISL behind. But then there's a number, and that number is the VLAN number, okay, that I'm encapsulating. And so for the administrative VLAN, VLAN 1, it's going to be here. Okay, and remember the gateway settings? This is important. So IP address, and oops, it's a stiff keyboard. I know I keep blaming the keyboard, but believe it or not, I've had 2 bad keyboards in a row. It's crazy. I went to replace it, and I got to know, at least the space works on this one, but it's super stiff. Anyway, remember that our IP addressing, right? This is network 16. Our first valid address is 17. That's the gateway. And then all of our switches are in that administrative VLAN. So to be the gateway, it needs to be 192.168.10.17, and of course class C with 4-bit subnetted in the last octet. And I'm just going to call this gateway for network 16 VLAN 1, which is our administrative VLAN. That's all we'll call it. And so these 3 things you pretty much want to do for each one, or I guess maybe 4 things, I don't know, depending on how you count it. But you want to select the subinterface, specify the encapsulation with the VLAN number, specify the IP address and subnet mask, and you don't have to give it a descriptive string, but that helps. You know, it kind of makes it easy to. You can do a show run. You can kind of quickly, easily see the router's configuration. I like strings, by golly, I like those too. But, you know, so maybe just take those 4 things that you should do. So we want to do that for our remaining 7 VLANs, right? So our next interface is going to be F0/ and 0.2. And I want to do encapsulation and .1Q again, and 2 this time for VLAN 2. And what was the IP address for VLAN 2? Well, let's start over here with our Cylons. Remember, that was the 32 network, so 199.207.10, and 32 is the network. The first valid address was 33, and that was the gateway. And we're using the same subnet mask throughout. Okay, and I might just give it a descriptive string and say gateway for network 32, VLAN 2. And then now I want to set my next interface, f0/0 point, let's see, 0.1, 0.2, 0.3. This will be VLAN. This is nice the way we're doing it because everything's kind of logically put together now. .1Q, I mean, you know, we don't have to, you know, 0.10 could be, you know, .1Q, you know, VLAN 5 or whatever. It doesn't have to match, but I think it sure makes it easier to follow if it does, don't you? And so VLAN 1, right, .1Q1, VLAN 2, .1Q2. So what would this be? You guessed it, 3. And IP address and 192.168.10. And if our block value is 16 in our subnetting, remember, so network 16, network 32, and then what's the next network? Well, 48. Well, the first valid address is 49, and that's our gateway, right? 255, 240, 4 bits, 2 to the power of x minus 2, or 2 to the power of 4 minus 2 gives us 14 subnets and 14 hosts per subnet or network. And a descriptive string, and again, we're just going to say gateway, because that's what a router is, right? It's a gateway for network, and we did 16 and 32, and this is 48, and this happens to be VLAN 3. Okay, and then let's select our next interface, f0/0, and decimal value 4. And let's do our encapsulation. Encapsulation .1Q and number 4 for VLAN 4. And let's do our IP address, and it's 192.168.10. And let's see, we've gone 16, 32, 48. Well, what's the next network? 64, right? But can't use the network address, so the first valid IP is 65, and sure enough, that's our gateway over here for this VLAN. So 65, our normal subnet mask being used there. And let's go ahead and set the description and gateway for network and 64 and VLAN 4. Okay, and then let's select our next interface, fast Ethernet 0.5, and let's do encapsulation. No, we don't want that. Encapsulation and .1Q, and this time 5 for VLAN 5. And let's do IP address and 192.168.10. And our next network, right? Let's see, you remember this is a gateway for our next network. So that was 64. Our next network is 80. And our first valid, if the network's 80, can't use that. Then so that means the first valid IP is 81, right? And that's our gateway. So 81, class C, subnetted the last octet with 4 bits, so 240. And we'll add a descriptive string. Again, we'll just keep calling these gateways because that's what they are. Gateway for network 80 in this instance, which happens to be VLAN 5. Now, 3 more VLANs to go. Interface fast Ethernet 0/0.6, and let's do an encapsulation .1Q6 for VLAN 6, and let's do IP address and 192.168.10 and 10, and that was network 80. Our next network is 96, right? But can't use the network address 96, so that means our first valid IP is what? 97. 97 is the gateway for VLAN 6 over here, so 97 and 255, 255, 255, 240. And description, let's do gateway for network and gateway for network 96, and that's VLAN 6 respectively. So our next interface, so fast Ethernet 0/ and then 0.7. Whew. We're almost there, guys. Encapsulation, make sure I spelled it right, .1Q. And this is going to be VLAN 7. An IP address 192.168.10. And that was the 96 network. And if we hop on over here and look at VLAN 7, The next network is going to be the 112. Again, your multiples of 16, block of 16, so we're moving up by 16. Well, we can't use 112, that's the network address. So the first valid IP is 113, and that happens to be the gateway, right, for VLAN 7. So 113, and notice that in VLAN 7 our IP start at 114 and 115. And that's why, 112, first valid address is 113, so. If you don't understand subnetting by now, well, I guess you probably maybe want to go back and watch a few of the subnetting videos. But now we want to actually use the subnetting. So let's do that. And gateway, and let's do for New York. No. Let's do network, and in this case we're 112. And we are VLAN 7. Only one more VLAN to go, guys. We'll be able to wrap this up. So let's select our next interface, fast Ethernet 0/0.8, and encapsulation. Of course, we're going to use 802.1q, so .1q, and specify the number 8 for VLAN 8. Let's do IP address 199.207.10, and let's look at our last. Remember, it's based on a block value of 16, so our last network was network 112. Well, what's this network going to be? 128. Well, we can't use the network address 128, so what's the first valid IP? 129. 129 is the gateway, right? So 129 is what we need to specify on our router. 255.255.255.240, and our subnet mask, and let's do our description here, and it's just going to be gateway for network, and let's do 128 and VLAN 8. Okay, we are all set. And after all of this, we certainly don't want to lose our configuration, so why not do a copy run start in case somebody shuts the router off or we lose power or something like that. Copy start run. No, I'm just kidding. Copy run start. Of course, if we did copy start run, that would erase everything, and that would be bad. We'd have to do it all over. But we did a copy run start, so it saved it into the startup NVRAM configuration. And let's just do a show run before we test all this out and look at our running configuration on all these sub interfaces. And just go through and check them. Subnet mask is good. .1q, so at 1, 2, 3, 4, Oleri. But 240, 240, 240, 240. Check the networks while you're at it. 33, you might catch a problem here before you get on all the other hosts to start pinging like crazy. It might be easier to solve here. So 97 looks good, mask looks good, so that's what we want. Yep, looks good. Okay, so we saved it, so let's hop off and test it out. So now why don't we test this thing out and look at our routing and our subnetting and our switch fabric and everything on our rack. So where should we start? Maybe at the administrative VLAN? Let's see if we can't do that first. So and I'll log into the first switch here, and of course I should be able to hit anybody in my own VLAN, right? VLAN 1, so 199.207.10. I'm on 18. We'll try 19. There's our good old exclamation points. And 24. Okay, so we have connectivity in VLAN 1, which we don't even need a router for that. But what about routing? If the routing's not set up right, we won't have, since VLANs are separate broadcast domains, I won't be able to reach anybody in VLAN 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Let's try that. So let's try to reach number 3 in VLAN 2, which is IP address 34. Okay, and so we're routing between VLAN 1 and VLAN 2. Yay! And let's try VLAN 3, so 50. Okay. And let's try VLAN 4, which was 66. We'll do hybrid 1 there. Looks good. And let's try VLAN 5, which was Yoda, which was 82. Looks good so far. I got routing from VLANs 1 through 5. Let's do 6, 7, and 8. So we'll try Kirk. He's 98. Alright, routing between all the way from VLAN 1 to VLAN 6 is looking good. Now we just need to test 7 and 8. Sarah Kana, she's 114, so let's try her. 114. Looks good so far. One last VLAN to test. VLANs 1 through 7 are routing, working good. VLAN 8, let's do the T1000, which is 130. And everything looks good. So from VLAN 1 all the way to VLAN 8, which means from network 16 all the way to our last network here, network 128. Everything looks good. And again, just to verify that, I'll hop on a host. I know it works from the switch, but just to test it from a host as well to see what that looks like, I guess. This has been the longest tutorial ever. If you are still watching this, wow. Your attention span is superhuman, amazing. I'm trying to do the tutorial and I'm starting to lose interest. But if you were going to set up a large network, these are all the steps you'd have to take, right? You'd have to, your subnetting and configuring your switching and your VLANs and your ports and your broadcast domains and layer 1, layer 2, layer 3. You got to do your routing, all those wonderful things there. Okay, so in the same VLAN, let's do VLAN 250, looks good. Let's do VLAN 366, looks good. Let's do VLAN 4, 2, 3, 4, that was VLAN 4. Let's do the VLAN 5, 66, so 82, which was Yoda. Looks good, looks good, it all looks good. And we just need to do 6, 7, and 8, so Kirk, which is 98. Reach home. And what else have we got? Sarah Kana, who's 114. And it's all good. And let's do Cameron this time. We'll test her 131. If I have to get killed by a Terminator, let it be her. And everything looks good. So our network's working, and there you have a router on a stick example with a little bit larger network, 8 different VLANs and a rack of switches, and how we would do all those bits and pieces there to configure the network.